Well, good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. This is our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I'm State Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly host, and I represent most of Chesterfield, where I live, all of Colonial Heights, and all of Amelia. My office is at the state capitol in downtown Richmond, so I don't want y'all to call in here yelling at me about federal issues. That's not my jurisdiction, all right? But the Virginia Senate, we're going to reconvene this coming Monday, May the 14th at noon, to advance the state budget to the Senate Finance Committee, where the work on the budget that was passed down by Governor Northam and approved by the House will be taken up by the Senate. So we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But I'm here today to answer your questions and keep you informed about what you need to know as it pertains to the state issues. And the number here is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. And I have a very, very special guest in the house today, my good friend, my new brother.
All right.
Bishop Leon Benjamin. And he is the senior pastor and the bishop of New Life Harvest Church in Richmond, Virginia. He is a former Democrat, but he has seen the light.
Hallelujah.
And he's a Gulf War veteran.
Yes.
Now, which branch of the armed services did you serve?
Navy, U.S. Navy.
Yes, my grandfather would approve of that. My grandfather served in the Navy, too. He is an emerging evangelical leader on the national front as a media spokesperson and conservative political activist. Now get this, y'all. Pay attention. He operated as a surrogate for Trump on the presidential campaign trail and worked on the faith-based initiative support team during the president-elect's transition to the White House. And, you know, today I was doing all my research on you, and I could go through and watch all the videos. You guys can Google Bishop Leon Benjamin and President Trump, and you too can watch the video of him talking with the president. The president actually gave you the mic and let you speak. You know, the pastor in my church is very covet. You know, he's not real willing to give up that microphone. To have the president of the United States to pass you the microphone and let you talk, that was just, I was so impressed with that. We're going to talk about that.
Wow.
That was I was amazed. I showed that to my boys today.
Mm-hmm.
So they were very impressed with that. Throughout the first year of Trump's presidency, Bishop Benjamin has played a vital role, and he served in a group of about 20 to 30 evangelical leaders who regularly serve as informal advisors to the Trump administration. Does he listen to you?
Hey, well, he has an option.
Does he listen to you?
Let's thank God. It says purposes are established in the multitude of counselors.
That's exactly right. Well, he picked some good counselors, because I can tell you that as a community activist, Bishop Benjamin has worked with public officials, civic and community leaders to make a difference in the areas of education, business development, and economic reform. And get this, he is also the president and the founder of Coalition of Leaders United, and they're dedicated to advancing conservative values and restoration of moral clarity in America. We need some moral clarity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We need clarity in our education. Tell me what you would bring more clarity in education in our schools.
Well, you know, it's amazing that you're asking me that question, because education is the core or the root of anything that you want to begin. My people are destroyed. That's what the scripture says, for the lack of knowledge. And so education is at the core of anything that you ever want to do in this life. Jesus brought on disciples. The word means disciplined ones or learners. And so education, if we don't have education reform in the way it needs to be, what are our children actually learning to do? And if you have the wrong knowledge, then you come out with the wrong results. And so education, when we talk about real true education, it starts at home. And then it kind of like bubbles out into the other areas of life. Education begins at home. And so there's a disconnect, I believe, with the true educational system for our children, because our children now are being targeted to even sometimes deny or to reject what maybe their parents have taught them at home. So we're seeing this now in a big way, that our children are not really being educated, they're being indoctrinated. Big difference between education and indoctrination, because indoctrination means I want you to know what I know. Education means I want you to become what God made you.
And you know, Benjamin Franklin said that a Bible and a newspaper in every house, a good school in every district, all studied and appreciated as they merit, are the principal support of virtue, morality, and civil liberty. That's Benjamin Franklin.
Wow.
He's one of our founding fathers.
Wow.
And also, Governor Morris, he was the penman and signer of the Constitution. He said, for avoiding the extremes of despotism or anarchy, the only ground of hope must be on the morals of the people. He says, I believe that religion is the only solid base of morals, and the morals are the only possible support of free governments. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion and the duties of man towards God. That is the Governor Morris, the penman, and the signer of the Constitution. You know, how many times do we hear people talk about the separation of church and state in a wrong way? I had some lady tell me the other day, she said, it's in the Constitution. And I said, show me. Because it's not there.
No, it's not.
It is not in the Constitution. No, it is not. In fact, it's a court case that occurred. It was the when prayer was removed from public schools. That was the year 1963. And after, in these two landmark decisions, it was Engel versus Vitale. That was 1962, and Abington School District versus Shemp. Should be something else, but 1963. The Supreme Court established what is now the current prohibition on state-sponsored prayer in U.S. schools.
Wow.
That's when it started.
I mean, you think
ago.
about the culminating environment and the whole culture at that time, because we're dealing with a lot of things going on in 1963. We're dealing with, Martin Luther King and the whole civil rights and a lot of other things, foreign policy going on with Cuba and, do we continue to participate in, these wars, and we got the Vietnam War getting ready to bubble up,
That's right.
And so to easily sneak in at that time, it was strategic of the enemy to sneak in with everything going on in our country and in our nation and around the world, to sneak in and grab prayer right out of the midst of our children and our youth.
And, we are reaping the consequences of that to this day. If you think about it, the generations that have come before. I remember talking to my grandfather. He's 93 years old. The Bible was part of the public school curriculum.
Right.
They read out of the Bible.
Right.
They had to write scripture.
Right.
Look how far we have come. There was such a move, I think, to take God out of our public schools, and there are people that still live now. People in their 60s and their 70s. There's this sense of respect that our generation does not really have automatically, and we're seeing the erosion of civility.
Right.
The erosion of manners, respect for human life, all of these things. And in fact, I was watching the news this week on CBS. It was on the national networks. There was this study that said that teens' use of electronic devices, including smartphones, for at least 5 hours daily more than doubled from 8% to 2009 to 19% in 2015. But this is the sad part. They said that these teens were 70% more likely to have suicidal thoughts or actions than those who reported 1 hour of daily use. And in 2015, 36% of all teens reported feeling desperately sad or hopeless or thinking about planning or attempting suicide, up from 32% in 2009. And they said for girls, the rate was higher, 45% in 2015 versus 40% in 2009. There is a sense, as a state senator, I get calls. I remember getting a call from a grandmother, and her granddaughter came this close to having her life taken. She had overdosed and just very tragic story and situation. And I can't tell you the number of stories that I hear about teens feeling not knowing how to deal with the pressure, now that we've taken God out of our public schools, these kids have no hope. I mean, and they're not being taken to church, a lot of them.
Right.
They're not being taken because I hear, well, we'll just take them out. We have so many generations of young people who are not churched and don't have that hope that they're turning to suicide. They don't know how to deal with the stress of the social media that they're exposed to, the rejection, and they're getting depressed and they're taking their lives. We've got to do something, and I hear this thing about separation of church and state, and I'm looking at what the founding fathers said, and there is a major disconnect between what people think today and what the founding fathers said. We're going to talk about it when we come back from the break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So I must have been getting ready for this.
All right. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and Bishop Leon Benjamin. And the number here is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. I just wonder what would happen if we put God back in our public schools. I wonder if we would see the depression, the suicide, if kids had some type of hope.
Well, the first thing that would happen, it would be screams.
Yes.
It would be like what happened with Philip when he went down to Samaria and he began to pray and he began to lay hands and deliverance began to happen. So the first thing that would happen is deliverance and the screams, because it says demons began to scream. Because what happens is in an area where prayer is no longer functional is darkness creeps in. So every demonic work, demonic activity now creeps in. The thing about Satan, though, is that he doesn't make a lot of noise when he has you. He would rather be asleep and undisturbed, according to Luke 11, going into a strong man's house and binding the strong man. So if the first thing that would happen would be great deliverances. You would see bondages broken, shackles, as according to Jesus quoting out of Isaiah, talking about the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he's anointed me to set the captives free, to heal the brokenhearted, to open up prison doors, and to set at liberty them who have been bound. I mean, you would see that deliverance. So that's what we would call revival.
We were talking earlier on the break, and we were talking about, as I was sharing that my grandfather had the Bible as part of his public school curriculum. So let's talk about what we have replaced. We're not using the Bible. The Bible was thrown out of our public schools a long time ago. And now, what are we teaching our kids? It's replaced with witchcraft. I put in a bill last year or the year before. I think I co-patroned it with Delegate Landis. And this bill basically said, because I had a bunch of parents that brought to me these books that their kids were reading that were creating a date rape culture. It was obscene what these children were forced to read. This darkness, you just would not believe what was in these books. We're not talking about, Beloved and some of these other books, creating a date rape environment. And it was put on the Chesterfield County Public School summer reading list. And it was brought to my attention. It became a big deal for quite a while, but it raised awareness about what our kids are reading and what's on that summer reading list. And parents started looking more closely at what their kids were reading. And I have to applaud Chesterfield County for pulling that list. We have to be careful what we feed our kids to read.
Absolutely. What's going on again is the trick of the enemy is to get our very best and pull them into darkness. And so if you want to start to control a community, a area, a city, or nation, you start at what we call taproot. You go for the children. You indoctrinate the children, and then those children ultimately grow up, and now they have been, so to speak, trained to think a certain way. And so if we don't get in there and what we call intercept and do what we call intervention, get in there and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? We're going to raise up a nation that, as we've been seeing, is anti-Christ, anti-God, and a lot of anti-principles of the Word of God. Yes.
They don't know which bathroom to use.
Yes.
They don't know what gender they are when God said in the beginning He created male and female. That's two.
But that's a seed. That's a seed. If I keep coming to you saying, don't you feel like something's not right with you? And this is a person of authority talking now. Don't you feel like maybe you're not who you're supposed to be? Maybe you're not born the way that they, and you got a person like that coming to you in authority. Right. What is a child supposed to do? Okay.
I mean, they're confused already.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be the adults.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a person that we're supposed to look up to. When I was in school, I got paddles.
Me too, right here. Did you ever get paddled?
I got paddled in school. I got, my goodness, soap put in your mouth.
Wooden
paddle. Yep. And then they told my parents, so that was another whooping. If I had to stay over a neighbor's house, they whooped me. And then I had to go home to get another, so that's 3 whoopings. Okay.
Oh, my gracious.
I mean, but the whole thing now is no consequence for actions.
Right, that's right.
Okay, Dr. Spock, don't beat them. You're gonna destroy them. When the Bible says the opposite, the Bible says beat them, okay, with the rod of correction, for they will not die. Spoil the rod, or spare the rod, spoil the child. And so we're seeing it now, and that's where the violence is erupted, because now the children feel that there are going to be no consequences for their actions. But it started as a child, okay?
There's no discipline. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And parents are afraid to discipline their children for fear of being reported to social services.
Yeah, it's a systematic devaluation of true familyhood or fatherhood. It's a systematic devaluation. It's a systematic corruption. If you're going to destroy someone, you destroy their functionalities, their systems. Glory be to God. I'm feeling happy right now. But you just don't go and cut off a finger. Right. I mean, that you can go on without that. But when you start destroying systematic functionalities of how you think, how you operate, how you perform, character issues and all those character things, then you're going to end up developing a monster. Okay, somebody that you cannot control. And you're wondering, where in the world did this person come from?
I talked to some of my friends who are school teachers, and they talk about, and we had some bills that came up before the General Assembly that basically said that you could not suspend these kids that are acting up in class. And my friends who are teachers, I mean, I'm oversimplifying the bill, but they were putting limitations and saying that you should do your best to keep that kid in the classroom. And my friends were saying, you need to let us teach, and you need to let us determine what course of action. I mean, we are putting our teachers in handcuffs and not giving them the tools that they need. If we have a child in a class that's misbehaving, there needs to be some consequences for that kid.
Right. Remember what happened. Remember what was taken out. The connection between home and school. Mm-hmm. Okay? There used to be a connection between home and school. In other words, you were going to school literally to a second mom.
That's right.
Or a second dad. That teacher was like your mom. Okay? So it was a different type of relationship. Then we see someone now who just gets, a check for $27,000 a year, and they do a curriculum and spit out the answers, go home.
Mm-hmm. So going back to that bill I was telling you about. So that bill basically said, if there is any sexually explicit material in the information you are providing to my child, that you must let me know as a parent at the beginning of the school year.
Yes.
So that I can opt my kid out. Now, doesn't that sound reasonable?
Yes.
You know what happened? It was vetoed.
Huh?
Yeah. It did not pass. It did not pass. I mean, what happened to parental authority? What happened to being able to, determine as a parent what you feel is appropriate for your child to read or not? Because some of the literature that they are pushing on our kids and saying, this is okay. No.
Again, this is about bringing God back in.
That's right.
And when you bring God back in, you also have to bring back authority back in of the family.
That's right.
You have to bring it back in because God and family kind of go like together. He created the institution. And so when prayer went out, authority went out, the family now no longer can exercise the authority that comes with prayer.
That's right.
Okay? Jesus said, when you pray, say. So now you're taking away what the parents can say.
Now,
Okay?
I know there's some parents out there going, what in the world? What is going on here? Do we really want to put God back in our public school? I wish you guys would look at the numbers of the suicides, the depression and everything going on. We're going to come back right after the break. This is a good discussion.
I can't lean on earthly things 'cause broken it's gonna fade. And I can't...
Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, and I have Bishop Leon Benjamin here in the studio today, and we're privileged to have him in here today. This is Teacher Appreciation Week. It's also
Yes.
Nurses Appreciation Week.
Did you go to Chipotle? Because they was giving away
No.
discounts. Yeah.
I am not officially a teacher anymore, regretfully. But I've been to a lot of schools this week. I was at Manchester High School serving breakfast. I went to Bailey Bridge Middle School and served lunch. And then last night, I was actually at the Amelia County Public Schools Employee Recognition Reception to celebrate our retirees and Teachers of the Year. And, our teachers are very important. Our teachers lay the foundation of knowledge and education in every person's life. They not only educate us, but they also teach us the lessons of life. And my mom was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. I taught four of my kids, I homeschooled for 9 years. When I came out of the public sector, in the private sector. Teaching is a very difficult profession.
Yes.
And I highly respect all of our teachers. They have their work cut out for them. I have a quote here for you from Noah Webster, and he once said that every child in America should be acquainted with his own country. He should read books that furnish him with ideas that will be useful to him in life and practice. As soon as he opens his lips, he should rehearse the history of his own country. I wonder how many kids today in America and Virginia could actually rehearse the history of their own country. We're so busy just trying to get our kids to read. They'll read them anything, get any kind of book, racy or whatever, just to get our kids to read.
Right,
I don't think that should be what we should be doing. But, I want to use this moment to thank all of our teachers who prepared us for the world outside. Our teachers have been an epitome of strength and a great pillar of support to all of us. And, a teacher is essentially a mentor and a role model for the student. The student believes in the teachers and every word they say, and they are noble and selfless people because they accept each of their students wholeheartedly without any bias and favoritism. I have actually lobbied for and gotten raises for our teachers in the General Assembly. So
Awesome.
I'm a huge advocate for teachers. They were just going to give them a bonus. And I said, you know what? We need to give our teachers an actual raise to offset the insurance costs that they're having to pay. So it's kind of a break even. I mean, our teachers work hard. And I used to run with a bunch of teachers in my neighborhood and dear friends of mine, and some of them heads of PTAs and that type of thing. And as we were running and when we were walking, we were kind of out of breath when we were running. We weren't really doing a lot of talking right then. We were doing a lot of panting and trying to catch our breath. But when we were walking, they would talk to me about, what it was like to be in the classroom in today's time. And, are we giving our teachers the tools that we need
Right.
to be good teachers? And because, we are raising this generation and they are teaching future generations. So, we need to equip our teachers and give them everything they can to be successful. So let's move on to the next subject. There's so many things that I want to talk about today. you said you are also, I thought it was really interesting. You are a strong advocate in engaging with African American churches to support President Trump's vision to restore economic prosperity as well. Tell us a little bit about that, because you've got an organization that Kingdompreneur Now.
Yes,
Tell us about
Kingdompreneur.
that.
It's about being able to awaken again the entrepreneurial spirit that is in all of us. This is something that when it is suppressed or when it is denied, the inner man or the real you looks for ways to survive. We were not meant to survive. We were meant to prosper.
That's right.
And so having a president now in the White House who understands not just survival, but prosperity. You take a survey sometimes of the average person says, where do wealthy people get their money from? The average person says they either stole it, took advantage of somebody, or lied to get it. So they have no idea of what it really takes to have the building blocks of success. And so with Kingdompreneur, we want to go back into the community through the churches, through the nonprofits, to be training centers and hubs, distribution centers of education and training and things to now get people to kind of return back to that entrepreneurial spirit that allows you to create things. Adam was in a garden where there was no chairs, no cars, no radios, no nothing. And we have to understand, God put everything we need in the things he gave us. So if you want a chair, look at that tree.
That's right.
Tree is in the chair. That's right.
I'm going to do that to my kids when they break you know how your kids will tip the chairs back just enough so you're like, you're going to break that chair. You need to stop leaning back. And your kids do that with their chairs. At the kitchen table, they like to lean back on the chairs.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them if they're going to replace it, they're going to have to go outside in the backyard.
And get it out of that tree.
That's right. That's exactly right. So President Trump had remarks on tax reform. And this was... President Trump spoke at the White House about the state of the tax reform legislation that he said this was a while back. This is back when it was days away from passing after the House and the Senate negotiators struck a tentative deal. And he also announced that the IRS said Americans would see lower taxes and bigger paychecks beginning in February if he was able to sign a bill before Christmas. And we know that happened. We're going to talk about that when we come back from the break. Well, you all are just absolutely mesmerized today. I haven't heard anybody call in yet. They just can't get over our discussion today. They're just flabbergasted, I guess. 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. Let us know what you think, but we are going to go on to tax reform. And that was at that particular point where the president invited you to come with your family, and you were talking about this is right before Christmas, and this was going to be the tax reform, the gift that we were going to get for Christmas. Tell us how it does affect your family. You were talking about win.
Yeah, it's a win first for the family, okay, because now our deductions and the savings that we get, the child credits because of our income bracket, now with this tax bill. Oh, I say tax cuts because I love it. That means more money back into our pockets. Okay. The next win, of course, is because of our as consumers we purchase, we make, we buy. So we have seen now that the consumer confidence is just way up. Now you have more money to spend to do things. Okay. So that's a win for the commerce. For the businesses and for those who provide products and services. But then the third win, oh my goodness, it's for now, our nation now becomes a nation now that can start to pay off their bills. And see, you know that a nation that keeps on going into debt and going into debt and going to debt is going to be a nation that somebody else can come by.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so
And
we'll
who
be on
owns
the
our debt? China.
we'll be on the chopping block
Yeah.
to be sold because we can't pay off our debts.
And you just bring up something that reminds me. Next Monday, whenever I go into the General Assembly, the Virginia Republican Senate is the only the Virginia Senate has passed a budget with no Medicaid expansion in it, with no hospital tax in it. We had a clean budget based on existing revenues. And that's it. Fiscally responsible.
Awesome.
Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know what happened? It was rejected. It was rejected.
You gotta be kidding me.
The House passed a budget that had Medicaid expansion in it, had a hospital tax in it, and they were assuming that we're going to get this money from the federal government. When Mick Mulvaney came out and said it's unsustainable, you cannot do that. You should not do it. It was like a Blue's Clues, he was saying, look,
Right. Can you figure
don't
out
do this. Can you figure this out? Blue's Clues, flashback.
Yes.
But the House did not get that. So they've included a hospital tax. They've included expanding Medicaid, the 9-to-1, the 128%, the 138% above federal poverty line. But here's the problem. They took the money, but they did not spend it on health care. They spent it on this and that and sprinkled all throughout the budget.
That's the problem.
And people keep saying, well, we should take the 9-to-1 money because we're walking away. We're leaving that money on the table. No, we're not. Do you know why we're not leaving that money on the table? It's debt. It
That's
is
right.
federal debt. We don't have that. And not only that, President Trump has said he is not going to continue to raise the debt ceiling. He's not going to keep
correct.
doing that. He's going to give the states a fixed block grant.
Yes.
This is what Congressman Brad and others have told me. They're going to give the states a fixed amount of money to deal with. And they are going to expand Medicaid. That's what they're proposing, the governor and the House. And we have said, no, we are going to be the backstop
That is
to
a
this.
bad idea
Yes.
to
Look
expand.
did you see what happened in Louisiana this week? They took, there were people who were in these nursing homes that were on Medicaid. And because they had expanded to able-bodied people, they had expanded Medicaid. You know what happens when you expand Medicaid? You blow your budget is what ends up happening. And then the state has to go back because they're under state law. They have to balance their budget. And then what happens is they have to cut services. So they're having to cut services to people who need the help. Medicaid was made as a safety net for people who can't work. And the House and the governor have gone through and said, we're going to put a work requirement on it. And I said, wait a minute. This program is designed for people who cannot work. So why would you put a work requirement on this?
Right. This is the thing where Jesus said, the poor you will have with you always. These are the ones who cannot help themselves. The government's responsibility to the poor, because he gave it to the church first. He told his disciples, the poor you have with you always. So that spills over into government, understanding your responsibility to protect your citizens and especially those who are most vulnerable. And so when you leave that off, and you start to put in all types of legislation and policies that now take the protection off of those who are most vulnerable. Now you're doing like we say, rob Peter to pay Paul. Is it pay Paul to rob Peter? Well, one of those things.
Somebody's
getting robbed. Somebody's getting robbed. Okay.
And it's you. It's the taxpayer.
It's the taxpayers. And
Yeah.
just back to the corporate thing about the second win is also corporations can now hire. They can, like all the bonuses. Look, they're not crumbs. As some were saying, okay,
Yeah.
these bonus checks were definitely not crumbs. And so the whole tax cut, it's not tax reform. We got to make sure we're saying things correctly. But President Trump is not doing tax reform. See, tax reform means let's pray about it. let's see what happens. This tax bill was actually a tax cut where things that were put in certain pools to be spent are not there because they were not being spent appropriately. So now they're being put in the right pool. So
90% of Americans got a tax cut.
that's right. That's right. And it's going to be even better next year. Wait until they file their taxes. Wow. It's going to be awesome. And again, right off the bat, $5,000 coming to families. You know, it's just amazing without even doing anything. The simplification of this whole tax plan is amazing. See, simplicity does work. Our president is trying to prove to people you don't have to have a 3,000-page IRS manual,
Right.
okay, trying to explain how to save people money and also how to save the nation from going into debt. You don't need a 10,000-page manual.
That's right.
Simplification of our tax plan is what is most needed right now. You know, 1 + 1 is still 2. See, and we're trying to make 1 + 1 3, 1 + 1 5, because we have people going into different pools, taking money out of places where it was designated to do something in the first place. And now you take money out of that pool to go do something else over in this pool, and you forgot that you took the money out of that pool. So now you're saying, oh yeah, I'm going to make it up. I'm going to put it back, and you never put it back. Do I got some people out there understanding what I'm saying? I'm going to put it back. I'm going to pay myself back. That's why you should never get a second mortgage on certain things.
Right.
I'm going to pay myself back. And sometimes you never get to the place where you pay yourself back and create that debt on top of debt.
That's exactly right. Well, I, going back to what we're going to be dealing with on Monday, I just want to let people know you're not going to see anything major happen on Monday, because what the Senate is going to be doing is taking this budget. This reminds me so much of, thankfully my kids have not wrecked the car yet, but it reminds me of stories I've heard about a kid that goes and wrecks the car and then brings it back home and said, Mom and Dad, fix it.
Oh,
That's what this budget reminds me of. The governor in the House have gone and they have wrecked the car and they brought it back to the Senate, and we're like, really? And they're saying, hurry up, fix it.
fix it.
It's been 3 weeks. Come on, fix it. And we're looking at it like, you are not even being fiscally responsible. You are not even using the current money that we have. You're spending this federal money that we don't even know that we have, and a hospital tax that hadn't even been passed. What are you doing? Like, we're just looking at them with with our hands on our hips going, really?
Wow.
I mean, that's where we are right now, really. And so whenever we go on Monday, it's just a formality. I mean, we're basically accepting the wrecked car. We're bringing the wrecked car and we're pulling it into the Senate floor.
Right.
And we're just going to stare at it and look at it for a few minutes.
Oh,
and then we're
goodness.
going to pass it over we're going to forward it over to the Senate Finance Committee, because that's where we work on the cars. We're going to send it over there to Senate Finance, and they've got several days they're going to work on it. And then they're going to give it back to us. And hopefully, they got some of the dings out of it, but we don't know.
Wow.
It could still look pretty messed
I
up.
don't think it's going to be fixed.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. And then we also found out that there's $10,000, $6,000. I think the Senate had $10,000 and the House had $6,000, a slush fund for Planned Parenthood in it. So we've got to pluck that out of there as well. We got a lot of work to do still. And the time is winding down to get the budget done, because it's going to go into effect July 1. And Senator Norment says, well, we're going to come up with some budget, but we're just standing here staring at this wrecked car that y'all sent over to us. And, the House and the governor saying, well, come on, hurry up, Senate. And we're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
It's totaled.
Somebody needs to either just go ahead and get Mako, or just total it and get a brand new car. Brand new plan.
They need the Senate budget. That's what we need. We need the old Senate budget from last session that had no Medicaid in it. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Cut to the chase. It's amazing. Pastor Benjamin and I were sitting here talking about, Bishop Benjamin and I were talking about, the current state budget.
Yes.
And where we are with Medicaid. Even if we didn't expand Medicaid, we went from being 2% of the budget to 17% of the budget to now 25% of the budget. Now, let me put this into perspective for you. Just think about your household, the pie that you have of your house. If 25% of your to fix the car. We'll bring in the other analogy.
That will never get fixed.
They will never get fixed.
Right.
Okay, you have 75%. Out of that 75%, you have to take care of our roads, education. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there, including me, that have their kids in our public schools. And they're saying, we want more money for our education. Well, those two things don't exist. You cannot say, I want to expand Medicaid and I care for our kids and our schools and I care for education. Those two do not exist.
Right. I have to say, that's why you're there. You're there to bring fiscal responsibility, and you must not let up. You must continually let them know that 1 + 1 is 2. Stop trying to make up these numbers and fudge these numbers that are not really appropriately. It doesn't make sense. It's not appropriate to keep making up numbers that never solve a problem. That's why you're there.
Well, let me tell you, it has been nonstop. Me meeting with my colleagues, me meeting with leadership, and I'm not in leadership, so a lot of this is passed down to me. But I ask questions. I ask a lot of questions.
You're anointed. I want to just throw that in there. They can do what they want to do with that. You are anointed to do this. All right.
But, we right now we have $3 billion difference. That's a chasm between the House budget and the state budget, $3 billion. And they want to know why it's taken us so long to take a look at this budget and figure out what to do with it. I mean, they're spending money that's not there, that's not promised.
Right.
That's not fiscally responsible or sound.
You're telling the community to take a leap across a chasm that everyone knows you're never going to make it to the other side.
That's right.
$3 billion is that's a big leap. And when I was flying over across the Grand Canyon, you know what I'm saying? Jump that, okay, right.
Yeah.
Everyone's going down into the valley because of that chasm.
And we look at other states. I mean, that's what gets me. This is not like we can't look at other states to see what happens whenever you jump across the Grand Canyon. The car crashes in the chasm.
Every time.
And that's why they had to go back and put the work requirement on it, because they had to reduce the number of people that they could help because it was unsustainable. It was taking up so much of their budget. Okay, let's go back to the pie. We talked about 25% undercurrent, 1-to-1 matching, where the state puts up $1 and the federal government puts up $1.
Mm-hmm.
If we just left it the way it is, we're still struggling to pay for that plus education and everything else we have. If we increase that amount, and what they're trying to do is use this hospital tax to pay the 10% that we owe from a state. And now there are other states that say that is not constitutional. But you can't do that. So that's a problem.
That's a big issue, because when you start talking about where does the money come from? And we know that money comes from production.
That's right.
Okay? When we produce, that's where money comes from. When there's lack of production, whether it be human capital, whether it be intellectual capital, or educational capital, when you stop producing and then you're still expecting us to get the money, then that is a problem.
I think there's a song called Money for Nothing in the Third Degree or something. We're going to leave you today on Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. Stay tuned next Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you. I loved it.